Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm your host, Kerry Simmons, and welcome to Everyday Eerie, the podcast where the ordinary meets the extraordinary. Dive into the world of ghost stories, haunted objects, eerie places, and unsolved mysteries that will send shivers down your spine. Each week, we explore the tales that blur the line between the living and the dead, the known and the unknown. So turn down the lights, settle in, and prepare to be spooked. So today's episode is going to be slightly different. I thought, and forgive me if my voice crackles or if it sounds like I am choking. I am getting over this cold and I have that annoying scratchy tickle in my throat. So if I take a pause to drink something, forgive me. But anyways, I thought that in lieu of it just recently being Thanksgiving and with the Christmas holiday coming up, I thought that it would be kind of fun to switch gears and to talk about situations that I would consider more like miraculous or divine intervention, or when God or angels speak to us. So one of these stories is actually going to be one from my mother-in-law, and then the other is a personal story. Now, I will preface this by saying that I'm going to do my mother-in-law's first because I'm giving a little bit of a trigger warning for my personal story. It does talk about miscarriage, and so if anybody finds that to be a very sensitive topic and does not want to listen to that, that will be what's coming up after this first story. So I will announce when I'm going into mine, and you can feel free to click out, don't listen, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Totally get it. So just wanted to put that little disclaimer out there. Also, this story is my experience. It's a personal experience. It happened to me. This is not to downplay anyone else's experience. This is not to make anyone feel bad if this is not their experience. So this is what happened to me. If you choose to listen, I'm assuming that that is what you are interested in hearing. So by all means, we all have different experiences and we all have different roads and different paths, and I believe that God uses us all in different ways and uses situations in our lives differently, and we might have challenges in certain areas where other people do not, and we might and vice versa. They may have it easy in certain areas that we do not. And so this isn't to compare, this isn't to make anyone feel bad or guilty at all. This is just to share a personal story of mine as it relates to, again, something I wouldn't necessarily say miraculous, but more of like a divine voice, divine intervention, and you'll understand a little bit more as we get into it. But I did want to offer the trigger warning first because it will be talking about miscarriage, and in case that's a sensitive subject for someone, you can listen to the first story and then, close out the podcast if you prefer. So this first story I'm just going to read as it was sent to me. So this is from my mother-in-law, and it is called The Disappearing Helping Hand. In March 2010 in Davie, Florida, which is in South Florida, I was driving a 2000 silver convertible Ford Mustang. It was around 8 to 8:30 p.m. I was driving westbound on Interstate 595, and it was a 3-lane highway and under construction. I was in my car with my son and had a major blowout. My car was going out of control no matter what I did. My car spun out to the other side of the road. I did a 180-degree turn and bounced off the guardrail. My car at that point was facing oncoming traffic. I started to immediately panic and thought my son and I were going to get hit and blow up. I suddenly got this feeling to flash my high beams a million times with the hope that the cars in front would see something in the road. My car completely stalled, and out of nowhere, a car appeared behind me and a man jumped out. He was wearing a cream-colored suit. He jumped in my car and told me to get out with my son and get on the side of the road. He moved my car to the side and told me everything was going to be okay. Now, as I turned to thank him, the man and the car were gone, like it never happened. What was strange about that is that traffic seemed far away throughout this time. My husband came to the scene and another guy came and asked if we needed help and if we were okay. And my husband doesn't believe how my car had absolutely no damage after hitting the guardrail. To this day, I really feel I was truly touched by an angel. There's no other explanation except I still feel eerie thinking about it. And yeah, this is a story that she's shared with me before too. And there are so many stories like this where people will be in danger or experiencing in a situation where someone will come to their aid, and then all of a sudden they turn around to speak with that person and they're completely gone. And I know what she means by that feeling of like traffic feels far away, because my sister has had experiences before, and I think this was an experience that I had shared of hers in one of the early episodes of the podcast, where she saw somebody there was one where she saw someone in her rearview mirror and then one where she saw someone in a store window, and in both scenarios it seemed like the world just stopped, like there was a pause, and that everything around seemed quiet and distant. So it's not, I've heard that multiple times. And you hear stories like this where someone will hear a voice or have a person physically help them, and then they'll turn around and the person will be gone. So personal guardian angel, angel sent from above, who knows, right person there, at the right time. I certainly believe in angels. Definitely could be a possibility, and it's a very sweet story. Now it's going to bring me to my story. So again, if you don't want to hear this, if you don't want to hear any mention of miscarriage, then go ahead and click off now. Now, this starts in the year 2020. It was towards the end of 2020s. My husband and my anniversary is October 21st. And so we were living in New Jersey at the time, and restrictions were kind of starting to lift a little bit. So this was, again, October is towards the end of 2020. And we decided to take a trip for our anniversary just to Rhode Island, so not too far away. And we had been trying to get pregnant for a few months at that point. Had not been successful yet, but we're still trying. It hadn't been that long where there was too much concern there. I think when people start trying, they expect it to happen right away, because if you're like me, for so long you're trying to prevent, and because you're positive that one little slip up and sometimes it does happen like that. But we had been trying for a few months and it just hadn't happened yet. So it wasn't concerned, but obviously it was on my mind. So we go on this trip. We had a lot of fun, but I was extremely tired the entire trip. Extremely tired, to the point where, like, the first day, instead of staying out, I said, like, let's go back to the hotel for a little bit. Let's take a nap. And I actually took a nap, which for me is, I love naps, but the problem is that when I nap, I'm like dead to the world for like 3 hours. I cannot take a 20-minute, 30-minute, half-hour like nap and feel good about it. Like, I am out for hours and I wake up feeling like total and absolute shit, and I'm just ready to go to bed again. So I avoid them for that reason, because it doesn't, as much as I want to take one, I don't like generally feel better taking one. So, but I was so tired that I had to. And so that kind of had me like, well, what's going on? Maybe something happened in there. So I get home and I take a pregnancy test, and sure enough, it was positive. So we're super excited. I'm really happy, share the news with my parents, my family, and not publicly, but just to my immediate family members, because in our minds and our perspectives, I don't find this to need to be a secret with the people who are closest to me. So we told them right away. Now, it was probably a week or so later when I started spotting, and I called my OB. I had already called and made an appointment for, like the first check or pregnancy confirmation appointment. But that wasn't supposed to happen until several weeks later. But because I was experiencing the spotting, they said, okay, come in, we'll do a scan, we'll see what's going on. So I go in, I have an ultrasound done, and basically when they came back with the results, they say, okay, we see a sac in the uterus, a gestational sac. Everything seems appropriate for this gestational age. Sometimes this happens, spotting can be super common. So I was like, okay, well, that sounds good. And I left that day telling my husband, saying, well, at least I know that it's not ectopic, because I consider myself someone with health knowledge. I'm a physical therapist. I mean, I, know a little something about women's health and general stuff and things that can go wrong, I guess, too. And so that had been on my mind, is just, generally when you have spotting, like it could be X, Y, and Z, nothing, or X, Y, and Z. And so in my mind, I had this fear of ectopic. It just kind of dawned on me. It was like a word in the back of my mind. And so I get in the car and I say, well, at least I know it's not ectopic because I saw it in the uterus. Great. We go about, our business, and the spotting kind of doesn't really stop. It kind of comes and goes. But at this point, I'm just thinking, well, it is what it is. It must be normal. She told me that it was normal. Everything was normal when they saw it on the scan. And so one morning, I wake up and I was extremely nauseous, which again, I was like, whoa, if this is morning sickness, pregnancy nausea, this sucks. And I thought that that's what it was, until I ended up with excruciating stomach pain. It hurt so bad. It hurt to stand up straight. It felt like something was being ripped from my belly button downward. So I was like, I don't know if this is growing pains, gas pain. I don't know what this is. So I called out of work. And now in hindsight, it sounds stupid saying it out loud that I didn't go to the doctor, but I had actually had a follow-up scheduled with my OB for the very next day. And this is what screwed me, was because I had that first scan and I said to myself, well, now I know it's not ectopic. I didn't think about an ectopic pregnancy at that point. Had I not had that first scan, and had I not been told that they saw a gestational sac in the uterus, I may have said, this is bad news. This could possibly be ectopic. Let's go to the ER. But because of that scan, I convinced myself, no, it's not. So I stayed in bed, the rest of the day. It's still, I took Tylenol. I was using a heating pad, whatever. I felt a little bit better as the day went on. I wasn't quite so nauseous. I was still super sore in my stomach, but it didn't quite feel like that ripping sensation. So I was able to make it through the day, make it through the night, slept a little bit. And so I woke up and my appointment was early the next day. So, my husband drives me because I'm still not feeling really well, and we wanted to, I just wanted that, that extra bit of support. And I get in there and they do an ultrasound, because I told them I was having this pain, and I told them, that I was still having the spotting and all that. And the ultrasonographer who's doing it is she says, what did we tell you last time? And I repeated what they had told me, that everything looked appropriate for that gestational age, which was very, very early, mind you, not even quite 6 weeks when they would be able to see a heartbeat or anything like that, just the gestational sac. Long story short, she leaves. And I knew in my head, obviously, they try and be slick about it, but that there's something's wrong. I just didn't know what it was. In my mind, I thought that I was maybe currently going through a miscarriage at that point. Now, when my OB walked in, she said, I'm sorry, but unfortunately I don't have very good news. And I said, okay, because I was again prepared for them to say, I think you're miscarrying. But what she said was, we see a baby, we see perfect size of a baby for this gestational age, but it's in the tube. And so I was super confused, because it was what? I was just here. You told me that there was one in the sac in the uterus, and now you're telling me that it's in the tube. It doesn't work backwards like that. What they think happened was that I had a rare occurrence of one embryo in the uterus and another in the tube, which is rare. I think it happens in 1 in 30,000 pregnancies or something like that. And because they had imaging of the sac in the uterus. Now, I'm not sure. What I'm not sure about is that first scan, if they did not check my tubes and therefore didn't see it. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I'm not pointing fingers or anything like that, but there were just a lot of questions, like how was it not seen before versus, what's seen now. But needless to say, it was an ectopic pregnancy. They wanted me to go immediately to the hospital. I had to have surgery. So I get to the hospital. They're prepping me for surgery. They put me on the table. I'm going under anesthesia. I start feeling like, tingly and weird on one side of my body. And so I say to them, now might be a bad time, but I think I'm having a stroke. And they were like, okay, count backwards from 10, whatever. Like they're there. And so obviously I have the surgery. I woke up. When I woke up, I felt very comfortable, almost happy, almost like joyful, which was odd. And I am sort of thinking that this could possibly be just like the effects of anesthesia. Sure. So the OB comes to me when I'm in recovery, and she tells me that I had a lot of blood in my abdomen, and that it was they checked everything. They checked both tubes, they checked my uterus, and everything looked great, and there was no reason. Like, this was just kind of like a freak occurrence. And I was like, great, fabulous. But in essence, they had to basically take a portion of my tube. They didn't have to remove the entire thing, but they did take a little portion of it. So basically, we're kind of guessing that rendered that tube totally dysfunctional. Now, if like anatomy, the tube isn't exactly connected, but it has these little fingers that help to grab onto the egg. But if you shorten that and you pull those fingers away, it just decreases, or it increases that space. So it might make it a little bit harder for that side to be functional. But then as I'm sitting there in recovery, I have my eyes closed and I'm still groggy and still kind of waking up from everything. And I hear a voice, distinct, clear as day, say, "You're going to have one more, and then you're going to go on to have healthy children." And my eyes opened, and I'm like looking around like, who's talking to me right now? Because it sounded just like someone is standing next to you. It wasn't a voice in my head. It was, and there's a difference between having a voice in your head and an audible voice through your ears. And this was through my ears. Someone was speaking to me, and it was a male voice. And so I was like, okay, interesting. Okay. And I felt, like I said, like comfortable. I felt happy. I felt joyful. I was calm. And then in the days after is when I really felt the sadness, and I felt the fear of what was to happen, and the unknown, and why me, and why something so rare. Why would it happen to me? Like, who, of course it would, like, kind of feeling sorry for myself, all that good stuff, or not good stuff. But so, time goes on, and time heals wounds, and we say to ourselves, okay, well, let's next step is we try again. So we tried for, obviously afterwards you have to wait until your cycle comes back, and there's a little bit of a waiting game in that, but then we started to try again. So several months later, it was probably around like April or May. So this happened my surgery was just before Thanksgiving. We had gone on our anniversary trip a little bit after our anniversary. It was kind of like bleeding into the beginning of November, and then I was pregnant for a couple of weeks, and then, I think I was around 7 weeks or so when they found the ectopic. So it was just before Thanksgiving. So by April or May of 2021, I had found out that I was pregnant again. And, this time when I found out, I was excited still, but that voice replayed in my mind. And I remembered it saying, "You're going to have one more, and then you will go on to have healthy children. But you're going to have one more. You're going to have one more." And I was like, damn it. I'm not feeling great about this. And then everyone kind of talked me off the ledge and said, rightfully so, but you're experiencing probably a little bit of fear, a little bit of trauma from what you went through. And that's not uncommon. It's not unusual. And that's, there's nothing weird about that, but just, calm down. You could be like overreacting about it. But still something just didn't sit right with me. And then I started spotting again. And it was also on and off. This time I had gone to the OB who knew, that I had moved at this point, And so I had a new OB, and I had gotten established with her right away, so that because I knew that I was trying still, and so I wanted to be able to call somebody who knew my history and who would be able to get me in right away to make sure that this was not another topic, because after that first one you could be a little bit more of a risk, even though my tubes and all that stuff still looked fine. They still wanted to double check those things. So I called her right away. She gets me in right away, and this time we're able to see a heartbeat. I was far enough along to where we could see a heartbeat. I was like 6 weeks or just after 6 weeks, and so we left feeling pretty good. So then that voice and that phrase hit me again. You're going to have one more. And so it's like, here you are happy saying, whew, I'm sighing like, a breath of relief. We heard a heartbeat. Fantastic. This is just me. This is just fear. This is just because of what happened before. And then that damn voice or that damn phrase comes back into my head. You're going to have one more. So I'm sitting there driving myself crazy. I'm Googling like the spotting, and I'm Googling this and that and the other. And you get to the point where you just get yourself like nuts, and I just couldn't shake it. I just could not shake that feeling. And so the spotting happened. It was on and off again. And I think that I was about 10 weeks between 9 and 10 weeks when I started to miscarry. And so I knew it. When I saw it, my heart sank. I knew it. And I went to the hospital. They did all the testing. They confirmed it. So needless to say, that's what happened. And I was like devastated, of course. I was so sad. I felt completely heartbroken. I was scared because I think at that point too, you're like, will this ever happen? It's not just like you're experiencing this again, but then you're worried for the unknowns of the future too. Like, what does this mean in regards to me starting a family? I was warned that it could take a little bit of more time because now we're not sure if one of my tubes is really functioning or not. So there was a lot of unknown about it. There was a lot of anxiety in my heart about it. But I'm the type of person that when something happens within reason, when something happens that makes me sad and I need to cry, I allow myself to cry. I allow myself to feel like very strongly, and I'll cry and I'll cry and I'll cry, and then I will never cry about the same thing again. I don't find it to be productive. I don't think that it's helpful. I don't want to be a woe is me, let me sit here and wallow in my pity type person. For me, the best thing that I can do to heal my anxiety about a situation and to heal my sadness is to say, this is my plan and this is what I'm going to do to make it better, to get myself out of it, to move on from it. I'm going to take the necessary steps. So like I said before, I'm like a health conscious person, try and be in tune with what's happening in my body. I try and, do things for my body that are healthy as far as exercising and, trying to eat nutritious foods. And I was sort of convinced at that time that there was something hormonally going on that wasn't quite right. I had been in PT school, and so, grad school, you're staying up late, you're studying, you're stressed out, you're maybe not eating the best. My insurance had changed a couple times, and so I was on birth control. I'd been on birth control for years, but I'd at least been on one kind, like the same brand. But throughout this time in grad school, because of the changes to insurance, I bounced around to like 3 or 4 different kinds. And I don't care what anybody says. That can't be good. It can't be good for you to start a kind with these hormones and this quantity of hormones, and your body regulates to that. Then you have to jump off of it and you're back into the same cycle. So I felt at that point like something was maybe not great hormonally. There weren't like huge symptoms that I was having, but different things that I noticed that I had not experienced before, as far as like feeling tired all the time, and my cycles, which were always regular, were regular, but they were starting to get a little bit longer. And because I was now tracking ovulation, I started seeing a pattern of like late ovulation when that wasn't, happening before. And so I was kind of convinced that there may have been something hormonal going on. So I cried and cried and cried. And then I said, all right, what are you going to do about it? Because this isn't going to do us any favors. So I, researched natural hormonal supportive supplements and vitamins and things that I felt had some research behind it that wasn't going to hurt me and that I thought could be useful in this journey to just support what I felt like I needed. And now I did those things. I got myself on kind of like a regimen. I paid a lot of attention to that, and I was very diligent about those things. And slowly I started to find that my cycle started getting more normal, and I was now ovulating in the middle of the month and right on time, like textbook kind of normal. My body felt like it was making changes at each hormonal, point of the month that were appropriate. My menstrual cycle seemed like it was more normal. So everything started to feel better. So at least it had me in a better mental space of, okay, maybe there was something going on before. We're going to push forward. We're going to keep on going. We're going to see what happens. But at this point, it was now around like the holidays. And so, my husband and I kind of were like, we're not going to obviously try and prevent at this point, but we're not going to stress about trying. Let's enjoy the holidays. Let's, feel free to be with our family and have a few drinks and just relax and not put too much pressure on the situation. Holidays come, holidays go. We had a great time. Everything was great. And then in January, I found out that I was pregnant again. Obviously, here I am holding my breath for 9 months probably. But, it got easier as the weeks go on. But, any one would be crazy to say that throughout pregnancy, you're not worrying about different things at different times. At least I did. You have like little milestones, like, let me get to this point and I'll breathe a little bit easier. Let me get to this point and I'll breathe a little bit easier. But I feel like, some people say, oh, I wish they could stay in my belly where they're safe. To me, I'd rather have them in my arms outside of the womb where I can lay my eyes on them and they're physically here, and anything that I see, I can get physical help for. So to me, it's not the protective environment. It is, but it isn't, if that makes sense. It's still an environment where I'm like, I have no control over what's happening in there. So it was very, very nerve-wracking. But when I say that this pregnancy was completely textbook, it was completely textbook. I got morning sickness, which I had not had with either of the first two, which sucked. And it does suck. And it's horrible. And morning sickness is not just morning sickness, and it's disgusting, and you gag 24/7. But this was something different. And this is absolutely not to say that people who do not experience morning sickness are at any more risk, or that their pregnancies are unhealthy. That's totally could just be your body. My body, when hormones were not appropriate, did not have morning sickness. So for me, any positive change that would differentiate, or any change that would differentiate this new pregnancy with the other two, was welcomed in a sense and felt good for me, because I was like, all right, it seems like my body's doing something it didn't do before, and what it tried to do before was no good. So the pregnancy was textbook. My son grew exactly how he was supposed to. He was perfect at his anatomy scan. And it was just a beautiful pregnancy, despite the nausea. It's a very typical symptom. So that wasn't in and of itself not beautiful. It was a perfect pregnancy. Throughout those early weeks, I was telling myself, I'm like, because I was still, feeling the fear and the anxiety. And I was still telling myself, like, okay, you heard that voice and it was true. It said you're going to have one more and then you'll go on to have healthy children. And I was like, well, if the first two were true, if the first was true, then this should also be true. And then I had to just, at one point, you let go and let God, and you say, you throw your hands up and say, like, I can't think about this anymore. I can't stress over this. I can't dwell over this. I'm putting my trust and my faith in that voice that I heard, that it was angelic, that it was divine, that it was a godly voice, that it was something that you wanted me to hear, to lay on my heart so that I didn't feel this anxiety throughout this pregnancy, to just remind me, like, you are here, calm down. And that's exactly what I was able to tell myself, and how I felt throughout the rest of the pregnancy. And I gave birth to what I think is the most beautiful baby boy in October of 22. And he is just, I love him, like, I can't even describe, and I can't even put in words. And I know that parents, they love their children and stuff like that. And that's not what I'm trying to say. But I think what I'm trying to say is I don't feel the sadness totally about those experiences before, about the ectopic and about the miscarriage, because I would go through everything again if it gave me my son. And I am truly of the belief that this was the soul that needed me, and this was the soul that I needed. And he was the one that said, I am ready for that to be my mom and dad, and I'm ready to come into this world. And I believe that kids and people are born when they're born for a specific reason, because that is when the world needs them. And God placed him here at that very moment because that was what needed to happen. And I would never in a million years, I'd go through all that again to have my son, just to have him. So, fast forward 20 months later, well, now I have a daughter. My son and my daughter are 20 months apart. And so when I first found out that I was pregnant with my daughter, I had taken a pregnancy test and it was very strongly positive, like what they call like a dye stealer, where the test line is much darker than the control line. And I wasn't even quite 4 weeks. I hadn't even reached the point of my missed period yet. I was a few days shy of that. So I was like, whoa, like I'm like pregnant. And so not that 100% means anything, but again, that was just like kind of like a different experience than I had before. So it was a super strong positive. I go in, I have my confirmation testing at like 10 weeks or whatever, 11 weeks, something like that, like towards the end of the first trimester. When I first found out I was pregnant, I had a very strong gut feeling that it was a girl. It's like, I know it's a girl. It's got to be a girl. I feel girl. My mom felt girl. Like people around me felt girl. My husband felt girl. But I, like mother's intuition, I felt girl. I had a dream where I was in the backseat of a car and I'm looking at a piece of paper and the word girl is on the piece of paper and it's circled in red. And so I woke up from that dream and I'm like, it's definitely a girl. Like, this is God's way of telling me exactly what's happening here. And I was like, that's cool. Like at that point I'm thinking this is a positive. So I go to my first scan and I'm told that everything looks great with the baby. Everything looks healthy, developing as normal. But there's this other, what they called anomaly in your uterus. I'm like, oh, well, cool. Because everyone wants to hear that there's an anomaly in their uterus. They had no idea what it was. It was its own little section. There wasn't like a sac in there, but there was like a little blob of something. So they didn't know. So my OB said this could be like a cyst, a little cyst, or it could be like a little blood clot, like blood pooling kind of thing, not like a clot, but like a hematoma kind of thing, or it could be like a vanished twin. But let's send you downstairs to the maternal fetal medicine people and let's have them take a closer look. So by the time I get to that appointment, they're doing their scans. Everything looks great with the baby. They don't see anything that she saw. And they're like, whatever it was, and this was like a few weeks later, whatever it was gone and everything looks good with the baby that's currently there. So cool. All right. So we say, great, wonderful, whatever it was, your body just kind of like absorbed it, got rid of it. Sometimes pregnancy makes the body do strange things. So we moved on from that. And I was just, like happily riding the waves of nausea and being pregnant. So we do the genetic testing that they do at 10 weeks, we find out the gender and all that stuff. And I'm sitting there anxiously waiting the results. And I got them, I remember, in the middle of the night. And it says on top of the results, consistent with the male sex. And I was like, oh shit. And, I would have been happy either. I love my son. I love having a boy. I think they're so much fun. I would have been totally fine with either, especially with what we had gone through. Like, I was not going to be choosy, picky about whether it was a boy, girl. I just wanted healthy. I just wanted, normal pregnancy. And so it said boy. So I was like, God, wow, that's weird, because I really felt so strongly. And usually, like, my intuitive sense, I feel like, is pretty good. And I've had dreams in the past of little things like that, where they were just kind of these like one-off, like I'm staring at something and I see a word, and like that'll come up later, something like that. So this dream felt different than a lot of other dreams that are just kind of like nonsensical dreams. And usually those dreams are accurate. And so I was like, wow, I had that dream. It said girl was circled. I'm like super confused because my gut so strongly said the other, but I guess it's a boy. So I'm wrapping my mind around the fact that it's a boy, and I wake my husband up. I'm like, it's a boy, So we're happy, we're excited, we're cruising along. We think of boy names, we choose a boy name, getting ready for all of this. And then the anatomy scan comes and the baby looks great. And the sonographer says, what'd you say you were having? And I said, a boy. And she was like, did you do the testing? And I'm like, yeah, that's how we found out. It's a boy. And she was like, I'm going to go get somebody, because what you're telling me is not what I'm seeing. And so she brings in, without saying anything, she brings in several other people who, one by one, and they do their own little scan, and they're like, this is a girl. And she's like, that's what I thought. And the next person comes in, that's a girl. And she's like, that's what I thought. And then the third person, that's a girl. No one had any hesitation. It clearly looked female. And so we were super confused. At first, I don't really think that I comprehended what that could possibly mean until the maternal fetal medicine, because that's where my OB practice does all their anatomy scans, is with the high risk OB, because it's right downstairs, or the maternal fetal medicine people, I should say. And so she comes in, she sits us down, and she's like, yeah, she's asking me about the genetic testing and asking if anything else came up positive. And, she looks up the results, and everything looked fine. Everything looked great, low risk for all kinds of like chromosomal defects and whatever, and or abnormalities. And she's like, but this could be sort of problematic, because this could point to some kind of genetic component. And so then when she's talking to me, I'm like, oh shit, like this isn't just a matter of they got it wrong. This is a matter of there could be something not typical with this baby. And I understand that there are sexual disorders out there, and that there are males who could be born with female parts, or the non-existence of male parts, and the insides and the outsides don't match. I understand that these are real things that happen, and this isn't to downplay people who have who have these medical issues going on. But I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Obviously, nobody wants that for their children. I mean, when you're having a baby, you don't wish for anything other than extremely textbook normal. You don't want life to be harder for them. You don't want there to need to be any other medical care. So whatever the case may be, even though some things are more serious than other things, you still in your mind are wanting your child to be 100% normal like everybody else, and without, again, the need for extra medical care, or what does this mean psychologically, like what does this mean for them? You don't want those things. So I respect the fact that these are real medical conditions, but they're not medical conditions that you want for your child. So they scared me. I was freaked out. I went home in tears, kind of like the why me, what was me, I can't go through this kind of shit again. And I was kind of angry. I remember being angry with God, and I was like, why? Like, you told me that I would go on to have healthy children. So why? What is this? What is going on? You gave me a dream. I saw the word girl. I had such a strong gut feeling, and now this is happening. So we paid for a private scan. She also said, this is definitely a girl. So everything inside is pointing to the fact that this looked female. Not hey, we can't really tell what this is, or there could be some kind of abnormality with the genital area. Like they could tell that it was female. So we're moving along, we're going back and forth between like, do we do an amnio? Do we do genetic testing? And so I didn't want to do an amnio right away. My husband and I decided that I would do genetic testing first. If anything was flagged on my end, he would get it done to see if he was also a carrier for the same thing, anything that could be an explanation for them. And if we were carriers for something that could lead to something, an explanation, then I would maybe go through with an amnio. So I got the genetic testing done and nothing came back. Everything looked fine. And so I get a call from throughout this time, I'm praying about it and I'm asking God to please give me a sign. Like, please, ease my anxiety, help me to get through this, help me to understand. And I had another dream where I was sitting in a room and it was like a black room. And there was just one of those like overhead medical lights. And I'm sitting on this medical chair, it looked like a dental chair. And there was a doctor in front of me who I have never seen before. It was a male doctor. He was like blonde hair, blue eyes. Not my I have a female doctor. I've never seen this guy in my life. He's got an ultrasound wand onto my stomach and he's looking at the screen. He points to it and he goes, there are the ovaries. There is the uterus. This is a perfectly healthy baby girl. And I wake up and I was like, okay, like that's good. But here I am being an asshole, like praying about these things. And then I have the audacity, like straight up nothing but nerve, like the audacity. And God probably deals with us all the time because we all have nothing but nerve and audacity. And I had the audacity to say, well, maybe that dream, even though I've been praying for a sign and I've been praying for confirmation, maybe that dream was just wishful thinking. So I don't know if I believe it. So now I'm still just as anxious and I'm still just as not trusting of God's promise to me, like an asshole. Okay. And now looking back, I realize what an asshole, like when you're in that mind frame, like if you're in that you're sometimes it's just hard. It's just hard to let yourself just like let go and let God. And needless to say, the genetic testing happens. Everything comes back good. I get a call from the genetic counselor who we had met with. And God bless her, because she did some digging. So when I should say, throughout this time too, when we did the genetic testing, we also repeated the blood work to see if maybe something went wrong with the sample. Maybe there was male contamination to it. Let's just make sure. So that sample still came back saying that the sex was male. And so this caused my genetic counselor to reach out to the genetic counselor at the testing center that does the genetic sample testing. And now they did a total deep dive. And I don't know how they do this. I don't know how this happens. But this is what I was told. So they were able to take my blood sample, and they were able to separate my blood from baby's blood. And then from baby's blood, they were able to determine, did dad pass down an X or a Y? And in the living sample of blood, they were able to see that there was an X. So it confirmed that dad passed down an X. I obviously have an X. And so we made a female. Now, when they did a little bit deeper of a dive into the percentage of Y chromosome that was found at the initial testing versus the percentage of the Y chromosome that was found at the second testing, they found that it was just enough to meet the threshold for being male versus like a no call. And so that, along with the blood sample that also showed that there had been a paternal Y passed down, led them to figure out that this was the case of a vanished twin. So a vanished twin is when your body produces twins initially, but one of them it is lost at the very, very, very early stages. So I had produced a twin, which in my mind is probably why my test was so strongly positive right at the beginning. And what my OB saw was the remnants, so to speak, of where this vanished twin was going to be developing. But it happens so quickly and so early on that your body just sort of absorbs it. And so this was a possibility that was mentioned, but because it just kind of disappeared, and because I wasn't far along with that twin that they saw like a sac or anything like that, had I come in earlier, maybe they would have, but by this time things had fairly, had dissolved for the most part. They were, it was a possibility, but it wasn't 100%. So in essence, this was the case of a vanished twin. So I don't know where the twins are coming from, but my body doesn't do twins well. So it tried to do it twice, and it screwed me over the first time. This time, it just gave me unnecessary anxiety. But needless to say, I gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl. And so then leads us down the road. Some people are probably thinking, what is this, like a pregnancy story? No, but there are little bits and pieces within. But another situation tying into this. So here I am, and this maybe was, I don't know, a few months ago now. I'm changing my son's diaper. My son hates diaper changes. He's like wrestling an alligator. No joke. He hates them to the point where he like physically wanted to go pee-pee and poopy on the potty before he even turned 2. I think because he hates diapers so much. He's still, we've been kind of like lax about the potty training lately, so he's still not 100% potty trained, but he, if his diaper is off, he goes on the potty because he absolutely hates diaper changes. And so I'm saying this because in my room, we have the diaper station because our bedroom is downstairs, kids' bedrooms are upstairs. So I'm not going upstairs every time they need a diaper change. So we have a diaper change station in our room. So I have him on the little diaper change station, changing his diaper, trying my best to like sing a song or say something fun or like throw things at him like, here, take this, look at this, to try and get him to chill out for a second. And he's wiggly and he's squirmy and he's acting like he normally does during a diaper change. And all of a sudden he stops completely, freezes, and is looking like kind of above me, but over toward the corner a little bit. And I'm like, what's going on, buddy? And he says to me, points up to the sky, to the ceiling, and says, baby sister flying. And I'm like, yeah, what? And then I'm like, no, baby sister's right over there in the bassinet. I was on maternity leave at the time, I think. This is only like a few months ago. My daughter's almost 6 months old. So yeah, so something like that. I think it was towards the end of my maternity leave or whatever. So my daughter is still in the bassinet, sleeping in our room. And she was taking a nap. And I said, no, baby sister's over there taking a nap. And he's looking up and he goes, other baby sister flying. And I'm like, okay, do you see baby sister up there? You see baby up there? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, okay. And so, then he's like looking and he's kind of calm the rest of the diaper change to get his diaper on real quick. I put him down and of course, they go, toddlers and kids will go flitting about, forgetting about anything creepy or weird that they just said and leave you in your thoughts. And so I was kind of like stunned by it because it was a weird scenario. It happened all of a sudden, the way that he just stopped dead in his tracks, the way that he pointed upward. And he is sort of at the point, now I don't know if what he saw, if we can confirm that was a girl. He's sort of at the point where like he'll see pictures of even himself as a baby and he calls it baby sister. So he thinks like babies that are around, like in my phone, pictures of babies are baby sister. So I don't know if it was a girl. I don't know if it was just a baby. I don't know. I don't know if this was one of the children that I lost. But it was, I don't want to say it was creepy because there was no fear about it. I don't feel fearful about it, but it was just strange. And it's like one of those situations where of course, kids, you know, like they do these things and they see these things and they're so in tune because they're so innocent. And I think that if anyone has the God-given ability to see things like that, then it's them. And maybe it is true. And I've heard before that those souls that had tried to come to us, that they don't leave us and that they are around us. And if that is the case, then it could very well be that we have little guardian angels who are watching over their brother and sister and their mom and dad, and maybe we'll meet them one day. But so all this to say that even though it's not divine intervention in the sense of I needed physical help and I was in a dangerous situation, it is in the sense of reminding us, voices that sometimes come into our hearts and in our minds that remind us to stay calm, to trust, to believe, to have faith. And like I said, this, I don't want to come across as somebody who's just saying that, oh, if you believe and have faith, everything will work out, because sometimes your way is not God's way. And sometimes what you want is not what's in the cards, at least at the moment. Your timing is not his timing. But in my very situation, there were consistent reminders throughout each stage of what was going to happen and how I needed to respond and how I needed to remain calm. And I think that what my son saw and said is further confirmation that that world does exist around us. And so it's not a necessarily miraculous story, but it's a story that brings me a lot of peace and brings me a lot of comfort, just thinking about the journey and thinking about the babies that I have now. And again, that I would go through all of it again to have the two babies that I have, because I just truly believe that when a soul is ready and when it's the right one and it's the right time, that this is what God intended, and these were the two babies that were meant to be here. And so I would relive that over and over and over again, just to make sure that my kids were mine. So other people might not see it that way, but that's the way that in my heart of hearts I see it, and I find comfort in those situations. That was probably the longest one we have done yet. I hope it wasn't too rambly or boring. It's not really exactly about spooky stories or anything like that. We will get back to those things, I promise. But I did feel like compelled for the Thanksgiving time and the Christmas time to talk a little bit more about some kind of positive spirituality, and just a reminder that the spirit world is a lot more than just ghosts and creepy things. Sometimes it's those little voices that remind us to have faith and to keep trying and to keep moving on when things seem tough or they seem hard. And also those little reminders from the little voices around us, our kids, when they say that they see something, feel something, hear something, to acknowledge them and to acknowledge the spirit of kids and how in tune they are, and that we can learn a lot from them sometimes if we just listen. So thank you for joining me on this journey. I won't say into the eerie, but the unexplained. I hope these stories captivated your imagination, made you think, etc., and that you'll join me next time for more tales of the strange and the supernatural. Until then, keep an eye out for the eerie in your everyday.